Hey y'all, it's Drew and Madison here. Welcome back to Get Snuffed, and today we are going to be continuing our top 10 moments. Well, top 20. We're going through top 10 today, and I'm pretty excited for it. How are you feeling about it, Madison?
I'm feeling great. Really excited to go through this. We weren't positive if we were going to split it into two videos last time, so I'm really excited to finish it out and get that list complete.
Yes. And if you haven't checked out our last podcast, going through moments 20 through 11, I'd recommend going to check that out first before you continue listening to this one or watching. We got YouTube, we got Apple Podcasts, hit up either. And you'll definitely notice that Madison has more comedic moments while I have more strategy moments, and that was a common theme. Anyway, you want to hit me with that trivia question?
Yes, I was just about to say. So, to be fair, I just looked up this trivia question. I haven't double-checked to make sure it's true, so don't at me if it's untrue and someone fact checks it and realizes that I didn't check. I'm not sure, but I think it sounds right. So the question is, which season had no contestant that went by a name that was longer than 5 letters?
Ooh. What? Wow.
Yeah.
No contestant that went by a name longer than 5 letters. See, the thing about this one is I'm never paying attention to the amount of letters in everyone's name. And I'm like running through seasons in my head. I think I might have it. No, that's not it.
I was like, you can throw out some, like, you can
Wait,
talk
is
about
that
the thought process.
Is it Vanuatu?
Yes, it is.
Oh yeah, let's go. Hey, see, I was thinking about it. It was like, yo, Chris, Twyla, Scout, Eliza, Rory, Sarge. But then I thought about it more, and I was like, is Leanne spelled like Leigh space Ann?
Yeah.
Or is it Leann?
Yeah.
And that was it. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good question. That's also very interesting that they got a whole season with just like really short names.
Yeah.
5 letters is a short name.
Yes. I mean, one of two of us has a name longer that you would go by on Survivor.
Yeah. And It's not like it's an abnormal name. Like, it's very much a normal name. There's a lot of normal names that are longer than 5 characters.
Yes. I wonder if Sarge's real name is longer.
He went by Sarge, so
but he
it
went
doesn't
by
matter.
Sarge.
It very explicitly said the name that they went by.
Yeah, that's just what I was wondering about, though. And maybe Scout? Was that her real name? I don't know if it was her real name.
I don't know.
We'll have to look into that one a little bit.
We will. But why don't you get us started on the list today?
All right. So, I'm going to recap my 20 through 11 really quick before we get through the list.
Probably a smart idea, yep.
So, I'm just going to rattle it off really quick. 20 was Russell's idol play in Samoa. 19 was Stick to the Plan in San Juan del Sur. 18 was the Courtney 3-2-1 blindside in Panama. 17 was Jay's fake idol play in MVGX. 16 was the Final 7 travel counselor in Heroes, Healers, Hustlers. 15 was the Aussie blindside in Micronesia. 14 was Richard dipping from immunity in Borneo. 13 was the final 6 vote of Survivor Cambodia. 12 was Denise idling out the Queen. And number 11 was James getting blindsided with 2 idols in China.
Thank you for reminding me of your list. I will now remind you of my list as well, and for everyone listening as well. My number 20 was Wendell's voting confessional for Chris in Ghost Island. My list is not written in order, so it might take me a second to get in between each one.
Amateur.
My number 19 is the Zeke going around and the like, I can confirm that Jay has an idol scene from Millennials versus Generation X. I thought that was fantastic. Number 18 was the Angelina, Mike, and Nick ladder idol search in David versus Goliath. Number 17 is the merge boot in Cagayan. Number 16 is Michelle kicking the puzzle again in Winners at War because of the callback. Number 15 is Sarah getting the legacy advantage after voting Sierra out in Game Changers. 14 is the Michaela boot in Millennials versus Generation X. Number 13 is also the no votes Tribal Council, the Final Six Tribal Council, and Second Chances. Number 12 is Billy Garcia. That whole moment in Cook Islands. 11 is Coach going to exile in Token Chains. That's where I left off.
All right. Well, let's kick this thing off. I will hit you guys with number 10. And number 10, I'm going to guess that a lot of people probably thought would have been higher on my list. I describe myself as the Survivor historian of this duo right here. And I am the one who goes through and says, oh, here was the epic play. Here was the game-changing play. I feel like people would expect this to be probably in my top 5, but this is Parvati's double idol play at the merge of Survivor Heroes versus Villains. And I love this moment because we hadn't really seen a double idol play like this. We haven't seen many people hold 2 idols at once throughout the history of Survivor. And Parvati was able to because of JT's risky move, which I actually don't think was the worst move ever. But anyway, Parvati plays 2 idols, and she plays one on Sandra, plays one on Jerry, and the idol on Jerry is the one that ends up idling JT out of the game. And it gives the villains the momentum for the rest of the merge, and they're able to lock down Heroes versus Villains. The reason why I wasn't the biggest fan of this moment in comparison to some of the other great moments that will be in my top 10, you'll probably know what they are. It's because I felt like this was kind of an easy play for Parvati if she has 2 idols. I think that at the time I was really excited watching it, but when I go back, I just kind of see it and I'm like, yo, that was easy. It didn't really seem like it was this extravagant play that was super grand and super ahead of its time necessarily. It seemed laid out on paper to me. It seemed like, okay, Danielle has immunity. They're not voting Russell because they're going to think that Russell's on the hero's side because he's been playing double agent. They're not going to vote for Parvati because they know she has an idol, or fearful that she has an idol, I think. I think she might have told Amanda. I might have facts mixed up on that, though. So then it kind of seems easy. The 2 safe votes right there are Jerry and Sandra. So to me, it just kind of seemed like that was an easy play to make, to get the momentum, to get through. So it was great in the moment, very exciting still, but just not as good in retrospect.
I agree with you there. I think that moment is a little overhyped. It's only impressive because she had the 2 idols at her disposal. She could have made a very similar move at that point with only 1 idol. It would have just been a little bit riskier. It was really just her making, because essentially the second idol that she had was borrowed anyways. She wasn't supposed to play it on her own accord. So that was just extra money that she had. It wasn't something that she really had much of a decision with. Like, if she had held on to it, it wouldn't have been hers. So I think that it was like an obvious move for her to make. I agree with you there. If she would have only played 1, or if something else would have happened, it would have been very strange. I agree with you overall.
Mm-hmm. Well, the way I kind of see it is, you think about other safe votes. I'm just going to use Winners at War as an example. When Kim was having to play the idol in the Minority Alliance, who she had, Tyson, Denise, and Michelle there with her, and maybe Nick? No, Nick wasn't there. Nick was not in the minority. And, of course, Kim, too. So there's 4 chances, so it's a 25% chance you're going to land that idol hit. Whereas here, it's a 50-50 if you have one idol, which is a lot better of odds. And if you have two idols, it's 100%. You're set there. So to me, it just didn't really feel that great because it was epic. We hadn't seen two idols be played before like that. And it was a moment that heroes versus villains needed to get over the top as a season. It just wasn't the best moment ever in retrospect.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. That was a moment that was close to being on my list, but because I feel like it's a little bit overhyped, I did not put it on my list.
And I thought I was having the hot take of putting it at 10.
But also keep in mind that my list values entertainment value a little bit more, and like, especially because I know I watched it live in person, but I don't really remember how I felt watching it live in person. So I watched it more recently, and that's the reactions I remember, and I felt it was obvious then. I was, especially in the context of newer school seasons, I was like, yeah, whatever, like, that makes total sense. I understand why she did it. But it was the first Spitz time, so that's why it makes a lot of sense, why people enjoy that move a lot. Also why I don't value it as much.
Alright, well, let's hear your number 10.
Yeah, so my number 10, we're going to go to Winners at War, and we are talking about Tony's ladder. Tony's ladder, here's my depression. I, like, anytime I'm sad, or, like, have a bad day, or, like, really mad, or just feeling literally any negative emotion known to man, I put on that clip of Tony and his ladder, and I feel better and feel like the world is gonna be fine, because I just laughed so hard at that clip. It is so funny, and the best part about that is that he goes on to win the season. In both of his winning seasons, he has those ridiculous moments. The llama moment of Kagiyan. Like, he is just, it's amazing that a man that is that crazy can win Survivor. That's all I have to say. Although in his new tell-all with Rob Sesternino, he does kind of say that the like ladder thing was a little bit purposeful, where he was like, "Yeah, I knew it wasn't safe, but I had to go on it so they'd think I'm stupid and they wouldn't think of me as a threat." And I'm like, God, what are you always thinking? How did you turn this into strategy? I can't. This man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what's so great about the moment. It's strategic at the same time as being absolutely hilarious. Because even without knowing that, stepping on it, I just wanted them to think I was stupid, him making the ladder in the first place was being strategic. He needed to have something to focus on at camp, and that was a project. And I bet he took a lot of help from Wendell on it, but he was thinking, I gotta build this ladder because I need to show off to other people on my tribe that I'm a hard worker and that I can go grab those coconuts and all those fruits up in the trees. Mm-hmm. And then it's just so hilarious. I mean, you see the scene, everyone else is carrying the ladder. He's just sitting behind, going like a drill sergeant, left, 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 right, left. And then once we get there, he steps on the first rung and it snaps. And he says, it's designed to be that way.
It's another one of those things where you could not write a better moment. And that is the clip that I send to all of my friends who don't watch Survivor. And I'm like, this is why I love Survivor. Mm-hmm. You get things like this. And
as Madison furiously punches her desk.
My knee. Sorry, can you hear that?
Yes, her knee.
Okay. I will stop that. No, because I can't hear it, but it's right next to my microphone, so it makes sense why you can hear it. Mm-hmm. But I didn't think that through. Anyways, but just like everyone enjoys that. You don't need context to really find that moment fantastic. It's just beautiful television.
Yes. I completely agree. And I also think another thing that gets lost whenever we think about Tony's ladder, a lot of people will always be quick to mention, oh, he had the shark and he had other funny moments. But the thing that people forget about is Tyson spewed some pretty good confessionals during that. And he talks about how they all signed a waiver. And it's a good moment for Tyson, too. And a lot of people don't really mention how good of a moment it is for Tyson. Sure, it's classic Tyson, but it's a good moment for him.
It's a good moment for Tyson, and really, it's a good moment for the whole cast, because they're all just sitting there laughing at him and having a good time, and there's, like, funny moments for all of them. Like, there's the callback in with Yule and the breadfruit, and him getting the breadfruit out of the tree earlier with his contraption, and then there's, like, Kim, like, hiding behind a bush because she's so scared of whatever's going on and, like, doesn't want to watch, and, like, all this stuff, and then Denise uses the ladder later in the season.
The secret scene.
It just gets better and better. Like, everything is perfect with it.
Yes.
It's everything. But
wasn't there a challenge right after that where Tony had to climb a ladder?
And he, like, scurried up it like a sewer rat, and then he's up against Jeremy, who's literally a firefighter and, like, definitely climbs ladders all the time. And he looks weak and like a chump compared to Tony, and it's just because Tony is like gotten practice in with his janky ladder and has no fear of getting hurt, so he just ran right up the ladder. It's crazy. Everything about it is so good.
Yes. It was an honorable mention of mine for sure. It was on my short list. I thought there were better comedic moments throughout the series. I didn't want to put too many in. That's the difference between you and me.
Yeah.
So I'll move on to my number 9. And my number 9, this is within my top 3 favorite tribal councils ever, no doubt. It is the final 6 tribal council in Survivor Blood vs. Water. I absolutely love it. I think it's the highlight moment of the season, and it showed why the jury phase of the game, the post-merge phase, I just thought was very good, because there was a power struggle between two sides after Tyson blindsided Aris early on in the merge, and this was when it came to a full clash between two sides. You got Hayden Moss. That's my boy. Bring him back, please. We need Hayden back. He's fighting for his life at this tribal council, and this is the first time it really felt like a live tribal council to me. He is going in just saying, listen, Sierra, it's you. We're 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, however you want to put it. Jervis is battling back, and then he slips up. Hayden catches him on it, and then it gets even better when there's a comedic moment mixed in as Hayden says, I'm not trying to rustle feathers. And then Tyson goes, you mean ruffle feathers? He's like, no, rustle, R-U-S-T-L-E. And Hayden still tweets about that. I saw a tweet about it pretty recently, actually. And then you get to the vote, and Sierra flips because she says, well, Hayden was right. And then it all amounts to the best rock draw in history. And it's between 3 people. And just think about how much of a robbed king Tyson would be if he drew that rock. But he also made a mistake at the same time. He could have played his idol. So that was a big moment right there with that rock draw. And I always like to think, who wins if Tyson draws the rock that Katie drew? I think it's Sierra who wins. I really do.
It depends on Redemption Island.
If Tyson comes back, yeah, it can depend on that. However, I do think what would happen is they would know that Redemption Island's coming back. Hayden, Katie, and Sierra would stick together, and they would probably vote out whoever doesn't win immunity between Jervis and Monica. And then Tyson comes back in the game. Tyson would have to go on an immunity run to get back in and get to the final. And I don't know if people would vote for someone who came back from Redemption Island even if he did play that dominant of a game. So it goes either way there. It's crazy to think about. I do think Hayden also has a chance of winning. And I even think Monica has a very slight chance of winning if that happens. So it was just a crazy tribal council throughout, all the convincing that Hayden was doing. He came in guns blazing. I forgot to even mention that when they're voting, Jervis Hey Dunn, D-O-N-E, Dunn. This ain't Big Brother, bro. I mean, come on. It's gold TV right there. And you're on a thrill ride throughout. I love that tribal council.
Thank you for reminding me about that Jervis voting confessional, because I do just want to say that's one of the things that makes me miss having the voting booth be in view of, like, you can see the contestants in the background. Mm-hmm. I don't like that you, like, have to go, like, upstairs now and it's just, like, a plain wooden wall behind you. Like, I love seeing the cast behind you and, like, being able, like, that moment in Millennials Gen X when, like, Jeff has to, like, peek for Hannah to make sure she's all right while she's, like, having a panic attack while she's voting. Like, there's some great moments that can happen when the, like, cast is in the background, and, like, also knowing the context of, like, just how close they are. Like, it's so much more interesting than the way it's set up now, and I don't like that they did that, and I want them to change it.
I actually do like the new voting confessional style personally, because I think better words will come out of it, and we might have to get more confessionals like Wendell's confessional in Ghost Island, rather than these angry confessionals that are some of the most iconic. We're looking at Crystal Cox and Gabon when she's yelling at Randy. We're looking at Jervis when he's yelling at Hayden. We're not going to get those batshit insane voting confessionals that much anymore, but we could get more clever and methodical ones like Wendell's, and they're not going to be afraid to say that stuff when they're behind a closed door. So it kind of goes both ways, but I see your perspective for sure.
But yeah, great moment. I agree with you. It's not on my list. I think it's once again one of the problems where I watched it. Like, once again, I know I watched it live, but I don't really remember watching it because I don't really remember any seasons before 31, which is weird, and because that's not that long ago. But I rewatched it, like, a couple of years ago, so after Millennials Gen X, so I'd already seen the context of their split, it was a 5-5 split vote for a rock draw, and, like, I think a lot of the context that, like, makes that one so exciting is that, like, you haven't seen a rock draw in so long, and it's so out of the blue, and I think I probably watched Blood versus Water, like, maybe right after Game Changers, so Millennials Gen X was, like, really fresh in my mind, so it wasn't as exciting to me, but it was on my short list. I do really love that moment. It's really fantastic, and I always forget that all three of the, well, not the first two things, but that the Jervis confessional was at that tribal council.
Yes,
I remember that the Hayden and the Russell Feathers moment was at that tribal council, but not the voting confessional, and that makes it so much more entertaining.
It's so good all around. The voting confessionals, the tribal discussion with Hayden and Jervis going at each other. The rock draw, of course. I mean, everything about it was so good. And I do think it's better than other rock draws as well. I think it has a combination of what made both those other rock draws in Marquesas and Millennials vs. Gen X so great. In Millennials vs. Gen X, you don't want to see Jessica draw that bad rock because she's so worried to go to rocks. And that's what made that moment great for me. You look at Marquesas, and it's the first one, and you get that excitement of, oh, we haven't really seen this. And we haven't seen this at all, rather than we haven't seen it in a long time, but you still get that sort of excitement. However, at that point, you're just hoping that Kathy doesn't draw the rock. That's basically what it comes down to. And when Pascal draws the rock, you're like, well, at least Kathy's still in the game. Here, you're rooting for Hayden at this point, and you're rooting for Sierra to make a big move, and then she'd be known for saying that many times later on. However, you know that when you're rooting for Hayden, if Hayden or Katie draws the bad rock, it's over for Hayden. And you don't want either of them to draw the bad rock. And then Tyson fans also don't want Tyson to draw the bad rock. So no matter what, people are going to be disappointed in the result. But it just goes to show the impact of the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great moment. It was very close to making my list. I do really enjoy it, but did not quite make it there.
All right, what's your number 9?
So my number 9 is very different than yours, but still a very iconic Survivor moment, and it is in Survivor Africa, the reward challenge, where Lex and Ethan go and visit the village. It's an iconic Survivor moment. Everyone really knows it. It's probably my favorite cultural reward of all time. A close second, though, being Eric in Micronesia. That is a close second, but for a very different reason. This one was fun. You did really get an idea of the culture. It seemed very authentic, and it was a lot of fun, very interesting, heartwarming, but also a little bit kind of like, oh, that's a little questionable what's going on over there. But just, yeah, great all-around moment. Very, very, very reminiscent of old school Survivor, and probably one of, the best old school moments. It really holds well throughout time. It's always going to be something that people are good with.
Yeah. That was the reward where Ethan gave up the hacky sack, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the moment that's always stuck out to me, because that's the one moment where I think of Ethan as the good guy. He's truly the hero. And that was when I thought was best displayed. Ethan was good throughout the whole season of Africa, and he's only been good since. We've seen Ethan in such a great light no matter when he's been out there. However, this was the one moment that always stuck out to me with Ethan. It's just, this is your luxury item, and a lot of people wouldn't even be thinking about giving up their luxury item or doing anything of that sort just to be generous on a reward, because a lot of them don't have the ability to. However, Ethan was generous. He gives up his luxury item to the children in the African village, and he just has that confessional where he talks about how much of a delight it was for him to be able to do that. And that was a striking moment for me. There were other good moments throughout the reward, which is what makes it so good. I mean, you really get to start to see how tight of a bond Ethan and Lex really have. It's not just an alliance. They do bond with each other. They're extremely loyal to each other. More so Ethan than Lex, of course, because it's Lex. However, you can still tell Lex has that soft spot for Ethan, and he will be a friend of his for a long time.
Lex has always been, I think, the most interesting Survivor character, because he's definitely a villain. There's no question about how he's edited, how he's perceived in the show. He's a villain, but he's also a really good stand-up guy. He has a lot of respect for people. He's very loyal. He's very trustworthy if you're loyal with him. And he's straight up with you. He does have some arrogance issues, and there are some definite character flaws, but there's nothing really truly villainous about him. And there aren't a ton of characters who really fit that mold of just really stand-up guy, kind of has just his off issues, but he's very much seen as a villain. And even by non-casuals, by everyone sees them as a villain, not just people who are just very plainly viewing the television show that's put in front of them. Wendell is a good example of Wendell was just portrayed as a villain, but he wasn't really a villain. Lex really was the villain of that season.
Yes. Some people would argue that Lex is an anti-hero. I heard that argument for the first time while watching Once Upon an Island. I disagree. I think he's a villain, personally. I really do. I think he has a lot of really cutthroat moments, and especially at the time of Africa,
exactly,
it's not good. And I even think Lex was a villain in All Stars. I really do. A lot of people see him as the hero, and he was the victim of Rob. However, the way I saw it portrayed was Lex was a hypocrite, because he kept on telling other people, hey, I know we have a bond outside of this, but this is strictly business. You're going home tonight. I think he did that to Ethan and Jerry. I think he did that to both of them. And then when Rob does that to him after the whole take care of her and I'll take care of you, then Lex is all pissed. It just shows that he's a bit of a hypocrite in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think in Africa, he was really on that level where he had that tight connection with Brandon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big thing that really ended up portraying him as a villain, because he wanted to keep Brandon around, but it would go against his alliance. And at that time, going against your alliance is like, oh no, they're the villain. So that was easy to portray Lex. And also, I think his look has something to do with it.
He was not going to go on that TV show and not be characterized as a villain.
Yeah.
In 2001, with the look he had, there was no way he was getting a heroic edit.
Because nobody had piercings and tattoos like that unless they were, at least at the time, you'd be perceived as a freak if you did.
Exactly.
However, you got to know Lex and you got to see, oh, he's a good guy, actually. But it's still the appearance. Everybody casual that's viewing the screen, it looks up, they don't even have to know his name or know anything about him. They're going to say, that guy's scary. Nowadays, it wouldn't be that way.
If you were to put a cast photo up and be like, who is the villain in this cast? 99 times out of 100, people would point at Lex.
Yes. And 0 times out of every single time, they would point at Big Tom.
Or Ethan. I don't think they'd point at either of them.
They never would. But that just goes to show that Lex is the villain of that season.
Yep. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's your number 8? I'd love to hear it.
My number 8 is when Natalie plays the idol on Jacqueline at the Final 5 of San Juan del Sur. I think this moment was definitely one of the most epic idol plays we've ever seen. And I think about that moment, and I remember at the time I was thinking, this is so risky to play your idol on someone else and gamble on that at the time. Nowadays, I just see that Natalie had control in that position, of course, and she was going to be safe no matter what. She has the idol, may as well play it on someone else to get more points from the jury, and that's exactly what she did so well. When she's playing that idol, she gets up, and then she has that great turnaround quote where she says, hey, Jack, did you vote for who I told you to? And then Jack says yes, and then this is for Jacqueline. Missy, Baylor, and Keith all stunned right there. And then I love the jury reaction from John Mish, too, where he's like, I knew I liked her. And that was, when you see John Mish there, you know the jury is just loving it. And then you're saying at this point, if Natalie gets to the end, there's no way she isn't winning, even if there's Missy and Jacqueline at the end with her, even though they have loved ones on the jury. And even Keith, at that time, she was going to be very competitive with. I think Keith was probably her biggest competition. However, I still think Natalie beats Keith in the end, mainly because of that play. And now you see a lot of people not necessarily pander to the jury, but they try and show something with their moves that the jury can remember, or that the jury's going to point out and say, that was epic. I mean, you've seen it a lot of the time since. I remember in Ghost Island, Dominic brings out his fake idol, and he's trying to use this fake idol to show off to the jury and say, I'm not going home, basically. You saw it a bit with Tony in Cagayan, but it wasn't really popularized until Natalie did it in San Juan del Sur. And a lot of people will talk about Amanda's idol play in Micronesia as a flashy idol play that really was trying to show off to the jury. I don't think so. I think she just liked to surprise everyone in the moment. I think Natalie was actually trying to make the jury like her. And that's what made the moment so great for me. It's so memorable. It was such a big evolution of gameplay, too.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that move's fantastic. I think that a lot of that, and especially the, playing for other people, comes from Natalie's experience on Amazing Race. She was very used to kind of at least understanding the perception that she was giving off to other teams. She knew how she stood with the other teams, and she could read it off of them. She didn't need people to tell them, although people did tell her that they didn't like her, or at least made it very clear, which I make sense.
Yes.
The twins in The Amazing Race were very annoying sometimes.
Awful. I hated them in The Amazing Race. Absolutely hated them. I love Natalie in Survivor. We just haven't seen enough of Nadia in Survivor.
Yeah, exactly. We can't say anything about Nadia. We have no opinion about Nadia because we don't know her very well.
Mm-hmm.
But
in terms of Survivor, we know her because of Amazing Race.
Yeah, but the Amazing Race, their personalities were really intertwined. So we don't really know either of them as individuals from the Amazing Race, so we only really know Natalie. We never got to know Nadia as an individual. But anyways, I think that ability to understand and be able to read your perception is so important in Survivor, which is why she's such an astute game player. Is she always knows, to an extent, how others see her and know what she needs to do in order to get to a perception that's going to win her the game. And that's why that move was so smart. And it set her up in a position where there was almost no way she wasn't getting to the end. Also, let's take a moment to imagine Keith Nail as the Survivor winner. Let's just all take a moment.
It very well could have happened.
I know, and that's crazy. That is insane that Keith Nail could have been on our TV screens for Winners at War, potentially. Let's just think.
I mean, keep in mind with Keith that obviously everyone loves Keith Nail. That's just absolutely true. Everyone loves him. Nobody dislikes the guy. And that's very clearly shown on television. Even the audience loves Keith. And you think about in the game, he was in the majority at a good number of times. But his social game was off the charts, really, if it comes to that. And Keith, he'll have things that he could argue to the jury and say, oh, I outwitted, I found an idol, for example. And he'd probably say it exactly like that. Oh, I found an idol. How can you go against that? And that's what made him such a threat at the time. Now we know, oh, Keith doesn't play the game. But imagine yourself being on that jury and you see Keith there. You're like, how do I not want to give him the $1 million?
Especially that cast. That is the only cast that Keith Nail could win this game. There's no other cast that they could ever assemble that Keith Nail, like, if you took, like, of all the first-time players and, like, threw them in to, like, it's possible.
I think Keith wins Vanuatu.
What?
I think Keith wins Vanuatu.
I haven't seen Vanuatu in a while, so, I don't remember it at all. I can't say anything to that, but, like, it would be so hard to find a combination of a season that Keith would win. And that season's a great one for it, because it was a whole bunch of people who had no idea what they were doing. Most of them were recruited, but they were, like, also with their loved ones, so it was just a whole mess. And there were really just a handful of people who were just, like, trying to control puppets, but it was a whole bunch of crazy people, so they couldn't control any of them. And that's the joy of San Juan del Sur. It's just a hot mess of a season, and I am here for it.
It certainly is, yes.
And it ended up with a fantastic winner, but it also could have ended up with a hot mess winner of Keith Nail.
Definitely could have. I think that I lost my train of thought. Whatever. Let's move on to your number 8.
Yeah, so my number 8 is from David versus Goliath. It is the introduction and the playing of the Idol Nullifier. I chose this this moment over the minority split vote because I like the moment of them all, like, coming together and, like, knowing what everyone has, and the moment of, like, the bing, and, like, it's a little bit more dramatic for TV versus the minority split vote, which is a very, very good strategic moment, but is it's more confusing. You don't really, you have to think about it a little bit more, so it's not as good it's not as good of a moment. Yeah, I think it's really the Idol Nullifier. I think it worked out perfectly in that season. I think that especially if we're going to increase the number of idols that are in a season, I think having the Idol Nullifier around is really smart. It should not be inserted in the game in the way it was in Island of the Idols.
Yes.
But I think we all agree on that. except for maybe Survivor Production. But I think it, as a game construct for the modern game, is really fantastic. And, like, it was a perfect storm, and Carl being dramatic about playing it, like, perfect. Owning it right there at Tribal Council. It's just a fantastic moment from start to finish.
It is. I think the Idol Nullifier has gotten negatively received, but that's definitely the best it was in its introduction season, oddly enough. However, I think that the Idol Nullifier could be a lot better. Like you mentioned how it was poorly put in Island of the Idols. I think that you could limit the Idol Nullifier to the final 7 or 6, potentially. I think that would be pretty good. I would argue 6, because a lot of people aren't going to use their idol at 6, because they're going to be scared of a 3-3 vote. However, it has happened in the past. There will be a lot of multiple idol plays at the final 6, but then you're focusing on nullifying 1 rather than 2 at that point. So, I do like the moment, though, because I remember, you got the Godfather with Bing! That's just awesome. I don't know if it's necessarily my favorite moment, though, from that season. David vs. Goliath is such a stacked season, ultimately. Because, you mentioned the John Blindside with the minority split vote. That's on my list, a little spoiler. And then I just think of other things. I think about the idol hunt at that reward. I think about Christian and Alec in the endurance competition, and Christian's just chatting off Jeff's ear. I think about even the Pat Medevac. I think about Jacket Gate. There's so much good stuff in that season that sticks out in my mind before the Idol Nullifier, because I still don't think we've seen the potential of the Idol Nullifier. We just saw it screw Dan once. And honestly, I think it might have left a bit more of an impact on me if I was more invested in both Carl and Dan as characters. But at that point in the game, they were probably 2 of my least favorite characters. Dan maybe being my least favorite. I just didn't find him very compelling at all. Maybe Kara might have been my least favorite, but it's between those 2. So I just didn't really have that moment stick out to me. I was like, okay, good play by the Davids. Good job, Carl. I like the Bing, but that's about it.
That's fair. I personally enjoyed it a little bit more than the minority split vote, just, once again, from that just, like, entertainment value that I tend to value more. But for me, it was very much a toss-up between including this moment and including the minority split vote on the list. Like, especially their back-to-back tribal councils. They're both the Davids kind of clawing their way out of the deficit of numbers that they were stuck in. They're connected in that way, so you definitely... It would be weird to include both moments on a list, I think. I think that one has to take over the other. And for me, that one weighs a little bit heavier, and then for you, the 3-2 split vote weighs a little bit heavier, but
a lot heavier.
Well, yeah, but it would have to be one of those 2. But I think they're both very great moments of the season.
They're good moments. One's great, one's good. I'll just take my firm stance on that and move on to number 7. That's what I will do. And number 7, we'll probably be able to get through this one pretty quick because it's one we've talked about already. It is the Michaela Blindside in Millennials vs. Gen X. And the reason why I love this moment, I tried to withhold myself a lot at the time, but you heard why Madison loves the moment. For me, it's Michaela was such a skillful player, and you were able to notice that on the beach. And then when Jay and Will pick up on that, they're just like, oh shit, we gotta change this up. We gotta get Michaela out of here. And then you get to the vote, and that first vote for Michaela pops up, and she goes, "What?"
Well, no, that wasn't the first vote.
Was it the second vote? Okay.
No, the third, because the 2 she was like, "Oh, okay, it was just Brett and Sunday. Brett, who cares about that?"
That's right. Yeah.
Third one, and she's like, "Are you kidding?"
But just the reaction was so extra. I mean, she takes a full lean. If you're watching the YouTube version of this, what? it's a full lean. I can't lean that far because she just had a stump. I have an armrest on this chair. I can't lean that far. And then Jay has that cold look in his face. And it's just such a good character moment for both these people. And then she goes, "Did you do that?" And he goes, "Yeah, I did." And it's just so cold. And it's so awesome, man. Like, at this point, Jay was a villain for sure. He could have turned into a debatable hero by the end of the season. But at this moment, you're thinking, Jay's a badass, okay? He's got that stern look. Bring Jay back, too. I talked about bringing Hayden back. Let's bring Jay back. We need him back.
100% we need Jay back. He's been on The Challenge on MTV, and he did really well there, too, apparently. I watched one clip with him on it, and I think he beat, like, in this, like, this one challenge that was, like, an elimination challenge. He beat the, like, strongest dude out there, and it was, like, very much a strength competition. So, like, he's still, like, performing really well. He's still strategically mined. If there's another second chance, he has to be on it. And if there's another Heroes versus Villains, I think he has to be on it because he's the fun one where he could be either a hero or a villain depending on how you decide to paint him. He's very much a debatable character because the show, I think, is trying to portray him as a... Millennials Gen X is one of the weird seasons where, like, everyone's best friends and they're all very open with each other because they're all really big fans. So they're, like, they edit it, and so the editing of the season is very weird where they're all portrayed as just, like, good people that everyone likes and gets along with, but that there's just the different factions, and almost no one is painted as a villain. If someone is, it's definitely Jay. But
Ken is a little bit, too.
Ken is a little bit... Ken.
And maybe Will?
Will has, like, that one episode, but, like, that was...
But Will's a very minor character in the season, that's the thing.
Very, very minor. And Ken really is a minor character, too. Like, Ken and Will, I think, have villainous moments, but I think that if anyone has a villain edit, it is Jay.
It's definitely Jay. Yes.
And even then, I don't even know if we can say that he is the villain edit. He is the most villainous edit of the cast.
Yes. I mean, I'm even trying to think about pre-merge. You really didn't have any villains. Really. Yeah. Like, no, Figgy wasn't. Nobody like that was either. So, yeah, it is a really heroic season in a way. And another thing I think about if you had a Heroes Villains, I think about there's two villains that have to be male villains on that tribe that are older. You look at Dominic and you look at Tony. Those two are undoubtedly villains. And if there is another Heroes versus Villains, there's a high likelihood that at least Dominic's on. Tony, I'm not sure about at this point. But even if you have Dominic there, you've got one older male. And you don't really want to have that much of an age thing where there's too many older people, older males on that tribe. So I feel like you got to insert Jay because there's not many younger villains there. And then Jay is just so good, man. He
is so good. And I love Michaela, too.
Yes.
I'm a very big Michaela fan. She is a great character. I've heard that the Storm is kind of the best thing that happened for her game because no one really liked her until they went and avoided the game for those, like, however many hours that they were sheltered away from the Storm.
Yeah.
And that's why she didn't do as well in Game Changers, is no one really understood her except for Sari. I mean, she did better in the game, but she didn't come out as much as a game player in Game Changers. Because, like, Sari just essentially had to protect her because no one else really liked her. And because she never got that chance to just, like, connect with people outside of the game, and she needs that. She'd be really good to see on, like, an actual All-Star season where she, like...
Where they know her?
But, like, where she has the chance to, like, talk to people beforehand. Because I think even her, like, she wouldn't make pregame alliances, per se, but she'd actually stick to. But she would be one of those people who would pregame by, like, talking to people she, like, thinks is going to be on the cast. Because she knows she needs those connections outside of the game in order to actually, like, thrive. Uh, so I'd also be down for a third time seeing Michaela, but I also don't think she's very much a part of the community, so I don't think that's going to happen.
Diversity in casting helps too, and ultimately the casting directors will call whoever they want to call and see what happens. I mean, Yule wasn't really part of the Survivor community. He recently kind of rejoined it online, but he wasn't part of it before Winners at War at all. And I think with Michaela and just in general, I want to talk about pre-merge for a bit, because this is honestly one of the best pre-merge moments of all time, if you think about it. And it's right before the merge, of course, but I think I only have maybe one more moment on my list that's pre-merge, and I'm sure people will be able to guess based off that. However, yeah, you think about pre-merge moments, and this is one that immediately sticks out to me. And you think about pre-merge characters, I think Michaela is one of the best pre-merge modern characters.
100%. She is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Just underrated moment. I'm gonna they're gonna see some tatas today.
Yeah.
One of the best quotes ever on Survivor. Like, that is fantastic. Like, so many great quotable moments out of Michaela. Weird choice to come back immediately for Game Changers, but fantastic player.
It's because she was that awesome.
Fair. It's still a weird choice, but it was I still was happy to see her back. I was actually really excited to see her back. I was more excited to see her than Zeke, because I felt like Zeke wasn't going to give us much else new. What a shock did I have coming into that season, that he had a lot of new stuff to give us that he did not want to. And
sure.
So good. She's a fantastic character. Would love to see more of her.
Mm-hmm. What do you got at number 7?
Number 7, another one of my favorite seasons, Cagayan. We've talked about it plenty. It is I have it written down as the wild goose chase idol search of Cagayan, where Spencer is chasing Wu through the jungle after he steals his clue, that scene. That scene, it has consequences to the actual game. It's not just a character moment, but you do see the characters of all these people. It's one of the funniest Wu scenes of the entire season, and
Wu's got some funny scenes in Cagayan. People forget about it.
He's not funny, but he's a funny character.
Mm-hmm.
Wu could not be purposefully funny if you held a gun to his head. He could not try and be funny if his life depended on it. But he is a funny character. And just that, and then it leads to that whole just madness, chaos, idol search through the jungle, and it's just gold. It's beautiful. Cagayan is full of great moments. It's like David versus Goliath. It's really hard to choose between all the moments, because I didn't want the list to be overloaded with just Cagayan and David versus Goliath and all these other seasons that are just chock full of these iconic moments. But that scene had to be on there. It's one of the best idol searches of all time.
Mm-hmm. I recently rewatched Cagayan, and I mean, in case you guys don't know, Cagayan is my favorite season, no question for me, and I probably rewatch it maybe every 6 months. I love this season. Every time I'm in a bad mood, I can just put on Cagayan, and this scene, it's just so awesome because we see Wu steal the clue, and this is when clues were super important too. And that's just epic in of itself. When he's running through the jungle, Spencer loses him, and then Wu just goes back to camp and reads it to everyone. And everybody goes on an idol hunt. And we very rarely see everyone go on an idol hunt. I can only remember one other time maybe, and that was in Samoa, where everybody was on an idol hunt. There might have been Edge of Extinction, everyone was on an idol hunt, but they didn't realize that Devon's already had the idol, so it wasn't as good. But this was the best crazy idol hunt we've ever seen, because it's just so instantaneous. And right when Wu reads that clue, everybody's saying, oh, we gotta look for the idol. Spencer's saying, oh, I gotta look for the idol at this point, while Wu's gone, and then he doesn't know that he's gonna do that, but then he catches up with Wu later and realizes, oh, yeah, let's all go look for this idol. And then it leads to a great search where everyone's in this mud wall, just scraping, digging, everything. And then all of a sudden Spencer finds the idol, but he's right next to Cass, and he can't just take it. And it's just gold right there, because he doesn't want to have the enemy see it, of course. And he's just chilling there, talking. Cass moves away, slides in his pants. And you're happy because Spencer's who you're rooting for at this point, and you really want him to be able to pull through as an underdog. And he does find that idol, and you've got that glimmer of hope that Spencer will be able to make it through further in the game. It wrote itself. It was on my short list. I didn't put it on ultimately, but awesome moment.
It's so good. It's, like I said, probably the best idol hunt of all time. Because there have been, I think, more than just the Samoa and the Edge of Extinction. Because there are, I think even in Winners at War, one of the idols was played, and, it was when Tony and Ben went, but, it was kind of said that everyone was searching for it.
It's more common now, and it happened when Natalie played her idol, too.
Tell you. Yeah. They don't as much show anymore as tell. It's all of these people are searching for the idol, and it's known, but you don't see everyone searching for the idol. Whereas in this scene, you really see everyone searching for the idol and really fighting for it, and it is so good. It is amazing. The cameraman running after Wu and the whole of the such bad shaky cam. It's amazing. I can't say anything more positive about it. It's perfection.
It's awesome.
Now, your number 6.
My number 6. I just realized we've been on for an hour. Shoot.
I know.
We gotta speed this up a little bit.
I know.
It's when Wentworth idols out Savage in Cambodia. And I love this moment because it kind of chains back to also how it was found. Because it was found in the challenge. And that was the first time an idol was ever played or ever put in a challenge. Of course, Jeremy would find one in a challenge later that season. However, when Wentworth finds this idol, by the way, Queen, love her, she's just like, I got it, and then we're finally like, yo, Kelly Wentworth's going to be able to make a run this season, isn't she? But then we go into the merge, we see she's on the bottom, and we're like, oh, shit, what's going to happen? Is she going to be able to play this idol successfully? Jeremy's a juggernaut at this point. He has 2 idols at the time. And he's got the majority with people like Spencer, Tasha, Joe. There's so many people on his side. Fishback. And it's Wentworth, Cass, Sierra.
That's it.
Was Abby there too? No, Abby wasn't on their side.
Cass was voted out, and Abby was in.
That's right. Yes, because Cass was voted out first in the merge. Yep.
Yeah.
And Wentworth has this idol. And nobody knows. And this was probably the best secretive idol. Because you just see the reactions of all these people when it's played. And, some of my favorite people reacting at Tribal Council ever were able to react to this. Like Spencer and Stephen Fishback. They just had these golden reactions. They're like, whoa, they're in shock that Wentworth has this idol, that she's playing it. They never would have suspected it. That's why they dumped all the votes on her. And they kind of got screwed over by not splitting the vote, but that's the result they're going to get when you got Kelly Wentworth on that side. And then Andrew Savage goes out, and that's a big moment because Savage was a big power player in that season. He was potentially the most powerful old school player. I know Kimmy made it further, but I'd say Savage was the most powerful one.
Savage was way more powerful than Kimmy.
Kimmy was just there. Savage was powerful. Kimmy was in the game in the majority, but she wasn't powerful like Savage was. And Savage was a big target because of that. But then it's just so great. I feel like I had the Russell Hantz idol play earlier that negated so many votes. I think it negated 7 votes. This one negates 9, which I think is a record. Yeah. And it's also just that idol play, but better to me. Because the reason why Russell's was surprising wasn't because, Russell has an idol. It's, he found it immediately after he played another. Wow, that's kind of shocking. And it was definitely evolution in gameplay looking after an idol gets played, too. But Wentworth just blows everyone's mind. Nobody even suspects that she could have found an idol in the first place. Russell, you could have suspected, he found an idol in the first place. And they had talked about that before. Never in discussion before the vote were they thinking, does Wentworth have an idol? Do we need to split the vote? No, it was because Wentworth was not going to have an idol, according to them. And then she brings it out. You get the reactions. You get a big player out of the game. It's awesome. It's my top idol play at the merge, I believe.
Although it wasn't quite at the merge.
Like, soon after the merge. Even, I think it's my top idol play post-merge in general, according to my list.
It's a fantastic play. I didn't want to include 2 idol plays from Second Chance, and I like the final 6 vote better. And that's about it. That's pretty much the only reason that's not on my list, is I just didn't want to include the 2 big idol plays from Second Chance. But it's a fantastic moment. It was definitely in contention. Kelly is fantastic. She's our hometown queen.
Seattle represent 206, baby.
Exactly, hey. But she is... It was insane to me that they did not split the vote. Not at the time, because I didn't know what was going on back then. But now it's insane to me that they had a 9-person majority in a 12-person tribe, and they didn't split the votes. There was almost no way for that vote split to go wrong.
Yes, there was no way for it to go wrong.
They would have had to pull 2 votes, which was a lot harder than just pulling 1.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, like, that was really stupid of them. They really should have done that. And they regretted it, clearly.
But that was the thing, the shock value of it. And it really sets the pavement for Kelly Wentworth to be the underdog throughout the merge, too, which is so awesome, too. And then even after the idols play and everybody's just like, well, we're fucked. You see Wentworth just saying, boom, yeah, what's up? I got you guys. And it's just, it's awesome. And then you're like, yeah, she's a real one. She's fighting with the best of them right now. And she's killing it.
Exactly. I 100% agree.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So, yeah, now on to my number 6. This is a moment from Ghost Island, and it would be the tied final tribal. An obviously epic moment. We've been waiting for a tied final tribal for a long time. They just told us with Game Changers what would happen in the event of a tie. And just Jeff walking out there and just going, I think I'm going to read the votes. I love how casually he did it, too. The fact that it was just like, let's read them. And the whole cast, because they specifically tried to cast superfans for Ghost Island because of the theme, they all knew what that meant. Well, not all of them. There were certainly a couple people there who were not superfans and did not know what was going on. But most of them did. A vast majority of them did. And they were all like, are we in a tie?
Yeah.
Is this a tie vote? Are we here for this? We get to experience this, and it's iconic. That's all you can say.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's even better because Dom and Wendell were so tied at the hip throughout the entire game. And you really saw them as the dynamic duo of the season. It's Dom, it's Wendell. Who's going to get the one out at the Final Four is going to win. But when they're both there, you're thinking, who's going to win? Dominic, right? And then it's a tied vote, and you're thinking, this couldn't have happened any better way, really. And I still remember when Jeff says, I'll read the votes at that tribal, as I'm watching that finale. Were we watching it together? I forget. But I just remember, I actually jumped out of my seat. I was like, what? And I remember my mom and my dad saying, why are you so excited? They're reading the votes. And I was just like, they don't read the votes after the tribal immediately after. They haven't done that since season 1. They usually go to Los Angeles and read the votes there. There's something going on. It's a tie, I think. And they're thinking, what? It's a tie vote?
Yeah.
It was awesome.
I mean, the only thing that kind of brings it down a little bit is the second it was a tie vote, you knew Wendell was going to win because you knew that Laurel was going to vote for Wendell, so it didn't really hold the suspense. But that is such a nitpicky, like it would have been a lot better if Laurel was really tight with both of them. Like,
I would have liked it if they edited it more where Dom had a strong relationship with Laurel, at least on the show, even if it was a fake edit. Because if you would have seen a strong relationship between Dom and Laurel, you'd be thinking, well, Laurel likes Wendell, but Laurel also likes Dom. I think they could have just edited it a bit better throughout the season, and that would have made the moment better.
Yeah. But overall, fantastic moment. I'm not going to nitpick here. It's almost in my top 5. Iconic moment.
On my short list. Didn't make it, but on my short list. So we're going to move this thing on. Number 5. Now we're getting to the real one, okay? This is the moment from David versus Goliath, Madison. This is the best moment of that season. This is the best moment in the last 10 seasons of Survivor. And it is the John Hennigan blindside. That merge vote was awesome. Well, not merge vote, but
I was about to say, awesome, not a merge vote.
Whatever. You right after the merge, there's a power struggle. We all know what the hell I mean, okay? Come on. I can't wait for people to hit the comments and be like, well, Drew, this actually happened 1 vote after the merge. I don't care. I really don't care. I will tell you right now, commenter, I will... No, I'm not going to do anything, but I will call you out on it, okay? I will call you out on it. And I just thought this moment was so glorious because it is an evolution of strategy. It's an epic moment all around. You got the Davids and the Goliaths, and the Davids know they're outnumbered. They figure out that Christian is going to get the votes, and Davey's like, well, I have an idol. And Carl's also thinking at the time, well, I have a nullifier. And they're thinking about how to play these advantages up. And Nick Wilson's playing double agent, trying to figure things out, because he has the tight end with Mike and Angelina, which is really helping out in this time. And then you get to the vote, and you're thinking, wow, are the Davids going to be able to pull this off? Because you also know Dan has 2 idols, and you know those are going to come into play. And we're all thinking, oh, Angelina's going to get the votes here, no matter what. That just makes sense. They've edited Angelina to be a merge type of boot. Little did we know she was a very focal character throughout the season, not just in the pre-merge. And it was just awesome. I love that there was the minority split vote. We have never seen that before. I'm not sure if we'll ever see it again. And I can't say enough about it. John going home that way, he couldn't have even expected it. He just got played. And that's one of the very few times where you can say, well, they just got played. They straight up just got played. There was nothing they could have done about it. There was no workaround, especially at the time. It was just, well, they got played. Love it. Defining moment of that season.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. Well, not as much, obviously. I think it was a very good moment. It's definitely one of the biggest strategy shifts we've ever seen. Like, there's never been, like, there was a while before that where there wasn't anything, like, crazy new in the strategy sphere. Like, there was Dom, that wasn't production-oriented. Like, obviously production had made some big changes to the game, but it wasn't on the players, and the players hadn't been the ones to initiate a big shift in the game since probably Second Chance was the last, like, really big evolution in the game. And this was a very big moment. It was very entertaining. 100% agree with you.
By new players.
What?
By new players. Yeah,
by new players. It's crazy. But the fact that they all came to this conclusion is insane. So good.
Mm-hmm. Defining moment for Nick Wilson. I also love how Davey has the balls to play that idol on Christian for his team. You really don't see that much of team play, tribal play, based on tribal lines in Survivor as much anymore. It's more, yeah, we're going to form voting blocks throughout the season and get the threats out. And excellent. Just absolutely excellent all around. And we're going to be speeding this thing up a little bit because it looks like Madison is going to be a little bit crunched for time, so we're going to try and speed things up throughout this. Let's get to your number 5.
My number 5, also from David versus Goliath. I think it's very funny that we have 2 David versus Goliath moments here. Mine is the Christian Alec endurance comp. You mentioned it earlier. It's fantastic. I miss these really long, drawn-out endurance comps that they used to do all the time. It is so funny. Christian just talking on and on for hours. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Once I say that word too often, it really is perfect. It's so funny. Great editing. It's exactly what you'd expect Christian to do too, and it's his moment to be the Goliath. They really leaned into that, and I bought every second of it.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
I mean, you're echoing, Madsen.
Got it. One moment.
Okay. So, then I'm going to just talk about this moment a little bit because Madsen's away from the keyboard right now. The thing is about this moment that I love it. It is a great thing that we hadn't really seen in a while, a long endurance comp. I think about Survivor Palau when I think of long endurance comps, that Final 3 comp between Tom and Ian. One of my favorite competitions ever. And you get Christian just chatting away at everything. And it, to me, was like a callback to Borneo and a callback to Africa, where you've got Richard Hatch singing 99 Bottles of Beer on the Wall. You got T-Bird singing that one song. You just got everything within that moment that was so perfect. It felt like old school Survivor Challenge in a new school season. And absolutely awesome. You get the Goliath going out. You get the big underdog victory and Christian at the end of it too. Awesome moment.
Yeah, so good. Really fantastic. Great challenge moment. 10 out of 10.
Yes.
Let's move on to your number 4.
All right. My number 4. Everyone knows the moment. Fair Play's Grandma Lie in Survivor Pearl Islands. The reason why I had to put it this high, a lot of people are probably like, oh, this moment gets talked about enough. This moment gets talked about too much. I'm a big Johnny Fairplay fan. I think he's absolutely hilarious. He was hilarious on the show. He's hilarious in his podcast. Love the guy. This embodies his character and exactly what he would do on Survivor. It is his moment. I mean, you had all these magazines talking about it, talking about how this guy was probably the most evil reality contestant ever. And this was really when people started thinking, where do you draw the line in a game? You can say whatever you want. And people were starting to think, where do you draw the line? I mean, you see it in a lot of future seasons where people would start lying about different things. You see people lie about their occupation. You haven't really seen people lie about a dead grandmother like that, though. So that, it still holds up at being ahead of what everyone else has done. And this is what really started making people feel, how personal should the game get? Should it stay as a game, or should it be personal? And Fair Play was the one who drew the line between that, and people still debate what they would do, and it's kind of person to person, of course, how they feel about it. But absolutely awesome. Gaining the sympathy from people by making a lie like that. I would never be able to think of that. He had to think about that before the game with who his loved one was going to be. That's incredible. Awesome moment.
It really is. I actually have this a little bit later in my list, so I will hold off talking more about it until we get there.
All right. Well, do you want to go to your next moment then, just so we can kick it up?
Yep. My 4th favorite moment in Survivor is, once again, Survivor Tocantins, one of my favorite seasons, the family visit. Everything from the exile and how we find out about the family visit to Coach and his assistant coach. To just everyone is like the whole scene is so fantastically done. I love that it's a part of the auction. I also miss the Survivor auction, especially with fire. I do think that fire tokens can get a little bit of the auction, but I think the auction is more fun than the fire tokens. And just this family visit is hilarious, so funny. Funniest family visit, at least top 3, if not top 1.
I'd say it's the funniest family visit overall. I don't know if it's my favorite singular family member coming on, because I've got, of course, Fair Play above that, and I've got Suri in my mind. I love when HB comes on in Panama. But yeah, I mean, Coach being so ridiculous. We talked about how he's the mystery man. Bring on his assistant coach. Are you kidding me? He should have made a return in South Pacific, by the way. He did not make a return in South Pacific. I am angry about that to this day. And then I think that Taj and Eddie were just such an endearing couple. And that was going back to people not saying who they are necessarily. Taj talks about how she's married to Eddie George about halfway through the season. And then people were saying, whoa, Eddie George, are you kidding me? And of course you get other people like Stephen Fishback, like, who's Eddie George? And then you see that their relationship's just so sweet, so great. And it's just, you get the comedic and you get the heartwarming at the same time. And you get some of the all-time best family visits in terms of comedic and heartwarming, which was what makes it so great.
Exactly. 10 out of 10. It has everything you want in a family visit. It's got shock value, it's got heartwarming, it's got hilarity, hijinks, all of it. Great. Yes. 10 out of 10. Let's move on to your number 3.
My number 3, of course, we're at the really iconic moments at this point for my list. My number 3 is the 4-3-2 vote in Survivor Heroes vs. Villains. Tyson voting himself out. I thought this was next level gameplay too, because Russell is there. This is my best Russell moment, no doubt. I think that a lot of people give Russell Hantz a lot of slack nowadays and say, oh, he wasn't that good. He was great TV, though. He absolutely was. And while I don't think he's the best player of all time, because I think there's other elements to his game that are missing, you can certainly say he's one of the best strategic minds Survivor's ever seen. And this just shows it completely. How he's thinking, well, I can't get them to vote for me because they think I have an idol. But I could get them to vote for Parvati potentially. And maybe I could convince Tyson that he should vote for Parvati. And then they won't split the vote. And then I can keep my alliance intact. And he does that perfectly. He persuades Tyson by saying he's going to vote for Parvati too. And that they're just going to boot her. And then Tyson just wants to be with the majority at that point. So he can say he was with majority votes. Then Russell plays the idol on Parvati, and everyone on the other side of the villains tribe, the Boston Rob Alliance, they're all thinking, well, I guess Russell's going home then. That's funny. Little do they know, in a way, Tyson votes himself out of the game by accident. Doesn't even realize it. And he realizes what's going on. Nobody else does, because he doesn't even tell anyone that he was changing that vote. And it's just strategic gold, best moment of Heroes versus Villains. It's a big part of why that is the best pre-merge in Survivor history, bar none. There's no question on that. It's the best pre-merge in Survivor history, and that's the best moment.
I agree with you that that's the best moment of the pre-merge, that's the best pre-merge of all history. This one made my short list, but it was not quite on my top 20. Wow. I think that it's not my favorite moment from Heroes vs. Villains. We'll get to my favorite moment from Heroes vs. Villains in just a moment. And I think that I think part of it is that it's not super simple. It takes a second for the irony to hit. And even, like, especially if you were, like, imagine you were a first-time watcher of that, you might not understand exactly what was going on, and the fact that Tyson had really voted out himself, you wouldn't understand that for a little while. You'd have to think about it for a little while. For super fans, definitely something that immediately you think it's hilarious, but I think that there's a little bit of nuance there that doesn't play as good as my number 3 moment also.
Well, I think there's entertainment value at the same time for casual viewers. I mean, you see Russell play this idol on Parvati, and then you see it played perfectly to where Parvati gets the 4 votes, and then Tyson has 3, so then that's why he goes home. So you see that already, and you're saying, wow, Russell really had the cojones to play the idol on Parvati. And this is another instance where I'll say Russell Hantz is not a selfish player. He's very loyal to his allies until they backstab him.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. It's just that's the reason I don't have it on my top 20. I still think it's fantastic. It was a very close call. I'm going to move in to my number 3 moments because it is also from Heroes versus Villains. It is JT and his love letter to Russell handing him the idol. Another very iconic moment. I think that I'm with you where I don't think it's the worst move, but I think in a game where you know everyone else and kind of what their game is, giving it to the one variable you have no idea how they play is really not smart. It's too risky. You don't have any idea of what they're going to do. In a newbie season where you have a pretty clear idea, like where you don't have a clear idea of anyone, it's almost less risky because you're like it's an equal bet across the board. Whereas he's the only one who isn't super, like, isn't known. And it's hilarious. The physical writing of the note is really funny. Just everything about it. 10 out of 10.
Well, I think the unknown variable part of it makes some sense, but I think it was a risk that needed to be taken for the Heroes. And if they're looking at anyone on the other side that they could possibly flip by using that idol and making sure they stay in the game, it would be Russell in that moment. Because you're thinking, there's 4 girls, there's 1 guy, there's got to be a girls' alliance. It could be, you're probably thinking Parvati's reformed the Black Widows. You could be thinking that in the moment. So you could base it off someone else that was in the game on that tribe that you already know as a pre-existing player. Of course, they didn't know Russell. What I do think was dumb was JT should be reading that and thinking, I'm giving this to someone on the villain tribe, one of the most notorious villains in Survivor history. We may not know him because they didn't get to see his season, but he's one of the most notorious villains in Survivor history because he's in that class with everyone else. Yeah, I would not be giving it up right there. That's my flaw in that.
Yeah.
You don't hand the idol to the villain, as Russell says. He's the enemy. A villain is an enemy. You're a hero. You stick with the heroes. The villains, they stick with the villains, and you never give something to the enemy.
Yeah, and I think that it would have been a little bit different if it were at the merge. Like, there's some ways that this could have been a better move. I also think that Sandra giving Denise the idol in Winners at War is the better version of this move that still didn't work out. But it's because that uncertainty wasn't there. Where she kind of knew who Denise was as a player. She felt comfortable with Denise. She shouldn't have been comfortable with Denise, but at least, like, she then could just be like, oh, well, I misjudged it. Instead, with JT, it's like once he got home and watched Samoa, he must have been like, my dumb ass should not have done that. That was stupid. That was bad. And that's my opinion on it. And that and I think especially compared to the Tyson vote, the irony of this is so obvious. You see it immediately, and that dumb music gets played immediately, and you don't know that it's going to work out that it gets JT voted out, but you know that it's going to cause a problem for JT. And it sets off the Parvati move. That double idol play with Parvati would not have happened if not for this moment.
What's up with the Tocantins players, I think, being the 3 dumbest players in Heroes vs. Villains? I mean, JT giving up the idol, Tyson voting himself out, Coach flipping on Rob. I mean, it's just, they're the dumbest players in that season. No question. Yeah. That's something that I think is underrated in terms of irony.
Fair point. And we've talked about a lot of those moments. Let's move on to your number 2 now.
My number 2 is going to what I think is the biggest blunder in Survivor history. I had to put this on my list. Eric giving up his immunity necklace in Micronesia. Now, James going out with 2 idols, I think, was the biggest blunder before this moment. And I still think these are the top 2 blunders in Survivor history. Because I do think there was some warrant to JT's move. These moves are inexcusable, in my mind. Eric giving up the immunity necklace as he's against an alliance of 4. He was really that debated by Sari. Are you kidding me? He gives it up, and then you're sitting there thinking, what the heck? I mean, you had Eliza reacting on the jury. You had James saying, I'm no longer the dumbest survivor ever. And then you get the voting confessionals after with Parvati. You are the worst and biggest idiot to play Survivor. Like, it's so good that everyone's going to remember because of that. I will never give up immunity, except for Brandon Hance. However, the Brandon Hance one, it didn't have the same effect. It really didn't.
It didn't.
It didn't feel as dumb. And I think Eric kind of had that doofus personality. I mean, his occupation during that season is ice cream scooper. And you see the long hair, I want to be like Ozzy. He had a lot of funny edit moments throughout the season. It felt so suitable for Eric. And it's definitely haunted him for his entire life.
100%. He hates how much it gets brought up. I love that moment. To be honest, I completely forgot. I have no idea why it's not on my list. I'm sorry. It should be. It should be. Like I said, it should be. I still have 2 really iconic moments left to go. And one of them, I think, isn't on your list, and I think that's a damn crime.
Someone didn't brainstorm well enough.
I
want to hear this moment.
You're gonna regret not putting it on your list, I think. But I think Eric is a great character. Where did they find that kid? I love Eric. He's so funny. That moment is so fun. I can't. I don't know why I forgot it, but whatever. Here we go.
It made a season. It made Ghost Island a season. Let's be real. It made it a possible idea for a season. If that immunity necklace was not given up, Ghost Island doesn't happen.
Yes, you're right.
I will say that.
I agree 100%.
Mm-hmm. So its impact is just great.
100%. I am going to move on to my number 2 moment. Now, we've already discussed it. I don't know how much I'm going to have to add for it. It's Johnny Fairplay and the Dead Grandma Lie. It's crazy that this happened in season 7. It's crazy that this happened at all. But it's such a great moment. Johnny Fairplay is going to live in infamy for the rest of his life. And he's built an empire out of the Dead Grandma Lie. Mm-hmm. He has built a Survivor empire. And it's a great moment. I also... Kudos to Sandra for completely seeing through it.
Yes.
She's the only person who was like, this is BS. I don't buy a second of it. There's no way that John is telling the truth. And she was right. Like, we have to give her credit for that, especially since her Pearl Islands game was not all that impressive. But that's a great, that shows how good she is. She saw right through it when everyone else was melting in his hands. Mm-hmm. And... great moment, 10 out of 10. We all know it. We don't need to discuss it all that much more.
Yeah.
You know what's going on.
All right, so then we're moving on to number 1, right?
Yeah, I'd love to hear yours.
All right, well, before we get to number 1, I'm going to rattle off just a couple of honorable mentions that were really, really close to making my list that did not make the list. I'm just going to rattle them off really quick for what made it to the end. First of all, I've got the final vote in Ghost Island. That was really close to making my list. I've got Chris beating out Rick Devens in Fire and giving up immunity. That was very close. I've got the 2 tribes at Tribal from Survivor Game Changers. That was very close as well. Tony speaking llama was almost my comedic moment. It was kind of a toss-up between that and Keith. And... yeah, I'd say those were probably my closest. Oh, also, the Fire making a challenge from Survivor Palau was very close to making it.
Nice. I'll share my... Oh, wait, you share your first place first.
No, share your honorable mentions.
Okay, I'll share my... I just have one. We already discussed one, and it was the Chris Ponderosa rap and the callback with the winners at war Ponderosa, because my honorable mentions are Ponderosa moments that I think are really fantastic that I did not want to include in my list. Mm-hmm. The other one is not actually, well, this was not a Ponderosa moment. I lied. But it is a non-game related moment, and it is Jeff Probst's cast assessment in Kagiyan, where he looks at the camera and he goes, Spencer has a 0% chance of winning this game, and they do that clip of Spencer just like turning around and looking at the camera with that derpy face. Mm-hmm. Great moment.
Also, I forgot, Sierra voting out her mom was also very close to making my list.
I find that one so annoying at this point, but
it's still a great moment to me. But my number one, we talked about it earlier. You missed how great this moment was. It was all the way back at number 17 for you, but this is number one, baby. It's the merge boot in Survivor Kagiyan. Best moment in Survivor history. You've got Sarah Lucina. She's in power. She's the swing vote throughout this whole thing. The focus is on Sarah this whole time. Who gets Sarah is who gets the vote. You go to this tribal council. Tony pulls out that idol and says, well, it's getting played on somebody today. And that's when you really start to see, oh, well, Tony's going to be like this in the post-merge potentially? Wow. Or he's getting voted out soon. And then you've got the other side. You've got Spencer. You've got Cass. You've got Tasha. And you see these two sides fiercely against each other. You know, Sarah wants to be with Tony, but she's offended by the top 5 stuff. And we get to the vote, and Tony plays the idol on LJ, and LJ is going to surprise everyone and play the idol on Tony. Both of their asses are covered. Great moment. Everybody on that side's loving it. But the other side's loving it too at the same time. He's like, ha, we voted Jeffra. Now they're going through the Jeffra votes, and it's 5-5. And then you see the vote, and it's Sarah, and everybody's clapping it up. Yes, we did it. It's time on that side. And they're all asking who flipped. And Cass just sitting there with that smug-ass grin that's always on her face. And you get the famous quote of Spencer saying, Cass, 0% chance at winning the game. An underrated moment, you get Tony mocking Spencer with his whole, like, looking thing. It's golden all around with this tribal council, with this vote. And I think it needs to be addressed that it makes even more of an impact, because if you think about the best villain in Survivor ever since Heroes vs. Villains, I'm going to say the absolute best villain, it's Cass. Cass is the number one villain. This is what defined her as a villain. And they said because she flipped, she's a bitch, and she talked about that a lot. Even though if a man did it, it wouldn't be the case. And a lot of people will say that's sexist. It is. It totally is. And it's not with the times. However, it made the character of Cass into the villain she is. That's what made her character. And if you're talking about the grandest villain in the last 20 seasons of Survivor, having one moment on top of such good strategy, such a great flip, such a great tribal, great reactions from everyone, and who you'd find out is one of the best Survivor players ever eventually in Sarah Lucina. It's only aged better over time. It's the best moment in Survivor history. I don't care what anyone has to say. Defines the season 2, sets the wave for the best post-merge of all time.
That's fair. I agree with you. It's a great moment. I can see where you say that I ranked it too low. I disagree with you that it's the number one moment of Survivor of all time.
Number one.
Will never put it at number one, but what I will put at number one, and the moment that I am shocked is not on your list, is from Survivor Micronesia, and it is the effing stick. How is the effing stick not on your list? The effing stick is comedy gold. It's literally a stick with a face on it. Who would think that's an immunity idol? Jason would, because Jason is stupid. And Ozzy is stupid, and he is the only person who to make a fake idol would just draw a smiley face on a stick. No one else would do that. It's just like two of kind of the like, they're the Surfer Bro characters, and they're making these like kind of dumb moves and kind of dumb decisions that no one else would fall for except for the two Surfer Bros. And they found each other, and then Eliza's reaction to everything, and then like the tribal council when it gets played and thrown in the fire, and Ozzy's like, hey, I worked hard on that. And it's like, no, you didn't. It's a stick with a face on it. You didn't work hard on that. Like, just everything about it is so good. I love that stick so much that I would... It's everything. I can't believe that moment is not on your top 20. I can understand it not being your number one because it's just my personal favorite, but it not being in your top 20 moments, that's crazy.
It's on my short list.
It should be in your top 20.
It's on my short list because I think it reflects exactly what we kind of based our lists off of. You based yours more off entertainment value and comedy. I based mine more off gameplay, and I had one moment that I thought was my favorite comedic moment on my list, and it wasn't even that high on the list. And I thought that mine were supposed to shape characters a lot more, and I think Stick to the Plan shaped Keith a lot more than the stick shaped a lot of other people. I love the stick moment. It's great. I was just talking with some people in a Discord server that I'm in, and we were sitting in a call and they were talking about Survivor, and I said, oh, here, they don't really know much about the show, so I said, oh, here's the worst fake idol that's ever been made in Survivor history, and I sent a picture of that stick, and they said, who fell for that? Like, it's absolutely great. I reference it a lot. I just don't think about that as a moment, per se. I think about it as an item, and when I think about the moment, I think about when Eliza says, that's not an idol, that's a fucking stick. That's the moment that I think about. And I guess I didn't think about everything else with it, but there is a lot with it. Good moment. Don't think it would make my top 20.
Like I said, I think it's horrendous that it's not on your top 20. I would have been shocked if it was also your number one. Even if it would have been 20, I would have been like, that makes total sense to me for Drew's list. But it not being on there is a crime. That is one of the best things that has happened on Survivor. It is, once again, it's another thing that you literally could not have written that, because no one should have fallen for that fake idol. Not a soul. And Jason, the probable only other person in that like block of seasons that would have fallen for that idol. It's crazy. It's insane. And I just love that moment so much.
So say we teleport it to a different season. Say that's put in Survivor Panama. Do you think Shane thinks that's his BlackBerry?
I'm not familiar enough with Panama to say, but probably not his BlackBerry because it has a face. If Panama happened now, he might think it's his iPhone and he'd FaceTime with his family from the stick. But BlackBerry, a little iffy.
Anyway, that wraps up our top 20 greatest moments in Survivor history. I had a really good time doing this, and here on Get Snuffed, we have plans to continue. We're still kind of tossing between a couple of different ideas for what we're going to do next. Leave any comments anywhere. You can tell us exactly what you would want to see. Currently, our ideas are doing our top 20 characters of all time, and doing a podcast discussing the best seasons for beginners to start out with. So be on the lookout for those. Those will probably happen relatively soon in the future. Do you have anything to say, Madison?
No, nothing to add. You handled it great.
All right. Well, we're going to get out of here. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you another time. See ya.